Sourcing candidates interested in relocation to Mississippi, I can appreciate that. Having developers respond to LinkedIn emails, okay, that's a challenge. Having enough qualified candidates, everyone has that problem. I haven't seen anything here. I've been doing this, guys, and many of you know. I've been doing this, if you've seen my picture, you know I've been around a long time doing this. I haven't found anything different lately. I mean, actually, I have to say, surprisingly, the same things I heard in 1978, 1988, 1998, 2008, and 2013. So it seems like the same problems just seem to exist. What I have seen is lots of different tools come out that contend they'll solve the problem. Job boards were one of them. The internet was another one. LinkedIn was another one. Jobster was another one. I mean, there's so many new tools come out, and yet after everyone gets the tools, what's surprising is there's diminishing returns set in. So I always suggest this, hey, when a new tool comes out, it probably does work for the early adopters. But there are a lot of people who are conservative, and they say, well, I'm going to wait till it works. But by then it doesn't work anymore. So you get it after the first or second year, and you're surprised, why isn't it working? And I'm going to contend that's where the high-tech, high-touch component of recruiting comes into play. A good recruiter can make any tool work if they add technique, skills, and that high-touch component. So that's what I want to talk about today. First off, passive candidate recruiting in general and networking in particular. I want to ask another question just to get a sense of this, and just put in one word, or maybe one word in the title of the job when I ask this question. The question is, don't do it until I finish it, please. There's nobody's going to get an award for the first one in. Are you in a talent scarcity situation or a talent surplus situation? Don't put the answer in yet. A surplus means you got plenty of good candidates to choose from, and you just got to weed the weak ones out. A scarcity is you don't have a lot of good ones to choose from. The demand is too high, and you've got to attract them. So I'd like you to just put scarcity or surplus and the title of the job. Just pick one job that you work on most. So put scarcity or surplus, and we'll see if you even need to come to this workshop. So we got scarcity. Remember, title of the job too. Surplus and scarcity and the title of the job. Scarcity, financial analysts, software developers. So I don't have, I guess we're getting people coming in here now. Software. I mean, I can't see it exactly the same. Good consultants. There's a surplus of bad consultants, I gather, right, Donna? Which I can probably find a lot of them for you. Call center jobs is a surplus, right? That's good. It's a different process. And I guess, so what I want to suggest is that there is really a different process when you're in a surplus model. It's posting up a boring ad, and you get lots of people applying, you weed them out. Well, that won't work in a scarcity situation, and yet most companies do. And I actually contend just knowing the difference between scarcity and surplus changes the whole focus. And if you're in a scarcity situation, I'm going to contend you have to go after passive candidates, and you can't use the same process, and you have to use networking. So let's kind of focus this program on networking for passive candidates in a scarcity situation. There's a couple big points I want to make, and we'll cover throughout the morning here. First one, you have to maintain control of the process. In 1978, the day I became a recruiter, it was applicant, the word that, and I had worked for two guys, both of them were great recruiters. One of them was, without question, the top contingency recruiter in the country, without question. The guy was extremely wealthy, remarkable recruiter. It was in the era when it just started. This guy aced it, and he said applicant control is the key, and it is the key. You have to control the conversation. Candidates will instantly say they're not interested for a variety of reasons. You have to control it. Recruiters have to determine if you're interested in the candidate doesn't determine if they're interested in the job. That's applicant control. It's not manipulative. It's just candidates make decisions without full information. Recruiters have to ensure they make the right decisions. And I'm going to say the way they do that is you got to recruit first and network second. I always recruit people. I don't network with them. I recruit them first, see if they're interested, see if I'm interested in them. If not, I develop a relationship, and then I network with them. And demonstrate that you're someone worth knowing. So there's a lot that goes on in that first 10-minute phone call when you get some passive candidate on the phone. Determine if they're a good candidate, determine if you want to pursue the candidate or not, demonstrate to the candidate you're someone worth knowing, and then network with the candidate. Part of, if you decide you do want to recruit the person, you've got to instantly, in 5 or 10 minutes, convert that job into a career move, excite the candidate. Hey, this is why you want to take this job. And it's a process. And I can't believe, and I know some of you are in this, and if you are, you might want to say it. I mean, I've seen so many search firms that dial for dollars, make 100 calls, make 30, 40, 50 calls. I had a search firm. It was stupid. I didn't want people to make 40 or 50. I wanted to make good calls. You made 10 calls and got 20 referrals, you were a hero. If you made 100 calls and got no referrals, you were a jerk, a dud. So the idea is it's a business process. And if you understand how to manage the process with metrics, you actually can be very, very successful very quickly. And I will actually contend, I don't know that I'm going to be able to prove it today, we certainly prove it in our workshops, is that passive candidate recruiting in the hands of a skilled recruiter, and generally using LinkedIn Recruiter, the full premium product, is far quicker than posting an ad. If you gave me a search for a reasonable job, and today is Thursday, let's assume it was Tuesday, because I just need the week, I would just take a quick supply-demand analysis on LinkedIn, and I could tell you, I know I could have candidates in 2 to 3 days whom I've never met. It's easy if you're a good networker. If I post an ad, I don't know, it's random luck. So I would rather, I mean, to me, passive candidate recruiting is focused, targeted. I'll find candidates. Now, for every one of the jobs you say you're in a scarcity situation, if they're not 1 in a million, and you're not in some geographic area that's very, very hard to fill, which that's definitely a problem. But if you told me you're looking for a senior software developer in Silicon Valley, I'd have candidates that aren't looking in 3 to 4 days. I'm just very comfortable in getting the names and calling and recruiting and networking with these people. So let's kind of go through the process, and I want to start at 10,000 feet and then work down, because you got to understand the population first you're going after. So we've done multiple surveys. Did one most recently about 4 months ago, but the survey, the official research base that I can validate statistically and everything else, was one we did 2 years ago with LinkedIn, but it's representative of what we just did recently. So this is a good pie chart of the market for fully employed people over 25, who are, and I think 25. So this market that I'm going to demonstrate here is a person who's over 25. So we didn't take rookies. We selected those who worked at companies of 500 or more and were all fully employed. So this is generally the market most companies want to go after for a senior staff position, not a call center, but certainly a senior staff position and management position. 28%, and we asked the people 3 questions. More than that, but 3 core questions. How satisfied are you in your job? What is your job hunting status, if any, from not looking to aggressively looking? And would you even, and if you were to even conceptually, even if you're not looking, conceptually consider a new move, what would you need in a new job? So those were the 3 things. Job satisfaction, job hunting status, and if you were to take a job, what would you require? 28% very happy, super passive, but they would actually talk to somebody about if the job was extraordinary, how to be extraordinary, and that's huge. 40% were explorers, and the reason they're explorers is because we asked them this question. Would you be open to explore a situation if it were clearly superior to what you're doing today? And just about everybody says yes. But just because they say they'd explore a situation that's clearly superior, they weren't interested in the job, they were interested in a great career move, but they would talk about it, so that's the point. That's 40%. These people are not looking. 28, so 68% so far are not looking. 15% of the population was starting to look, but they only contacted someone whom they had worked with and had a close relationship. So these are people that you might get through an employee referral program if your employees are tapped into their best previous coworkers. That's 15%, but because they're fully employed and reasonably happy, they just had something was going on in the company, they still wanted a better job than one they had. So it had to be a good career move. They weren't in a position where they had to take something less. They were still very discriminating. So that's 83% of the population that you probably want to go after that would be considered either passive or just ready to bite. Then you had 17% left, searchers, networkers, and hunters. And even the people who just started looking, the searchers and the networks, still want a good career move. These are fully employed people. Only 8% would take a lateral transfer. So if your job descriptions emphasize skills, duties, and responsibilities and appear to be a lateral transfer, even despite you say, oh, we have a great company, our job is awesome, we're exciting, we want great people, but if the emphasis is on skills, it's really a lateral transfer. You're just sending a message there. So the idea is this is the marketplace. In all our training, we're going after this marketplace. In a scarcity situation, generally you're going after the 83%, super passives, explorers, and tiptoes. That's why I recommend in building a sourcing plan. I call it the 20-20-60 sourcing plan. 20% on very compelling, visible messages that are career-oriented. Visible and compelling. One without the other doesn't help. A visible message that's boring might work, but not well. A great message that's not visible won't work at all, but a visible and compelling message, you'll get the best of anybody who's looking. And I actually drive candidates who aren't looking to the posting as a reconfirmation that the job is a pretty cool job. The second one is targeted emails, and that's compelling messaging. So if you're sending emails to LinkedIn and they're boring or template-based, you're not going to get them. It won't work. So part of it, it's still hard to break through the noise anyway, but if you're sending generic messages that are boring and not inspirational or focused on what the candidate is looking for, it's not going to work. And most of the times when I see emails that are ineffective, it's just they're inappropriate for the person you're targeting. You have to understand your audience, and you have to write messaging geared to your audience.
Hello?
Yes.
We have a quick question here. Could you let us know what you mean by an extraordinary career move? What does that mean?
Well, I'm going to get to that.
Okay, great.
That's probably premature. Now, I'm going to show you in a second. But fair enough, and that's part of it. You have to describe that, and I will show you that. The other 60% is what I would call networking, and this is, I call it VTC, is a virtual talent community, and PERP is proactive employee referral program. A virtual talent community is your connections. If you work for a company, it's all the connections your employees have. The reason a virtual talent community is so important is that in LinkedIn Recruiter, you can search on your connections using all their search tools. So I'm seeing Adam Bechtel here. If Adam and I are connected, and Adam has his connections open, and if he was a coworker, I could ask him to do it, I could search on Adam's connections. So if I was looking for a supply chain manager, and Adam was a distribution manager for Walmart or something, I could look on his connections. Hey, Adam, when you worked at UPS, you had 3 people who set up systems for that. What do you think of those people? Now all of a sudden, I can get a pre-qualified referral. I'm going to go through that, but I just want to describe that's what a virtual talent community is. A PERP, proactive employee referral, is calling people whom I already know and asking them, searching on their connections proactively and say, Adam, what do you think of Bill, Mary, and Sam for those jobs? So I just want to set the stage here is this is at 20,000 feet what the concept is. I want to kind of keep on going deeper and deeper so you get a feel for it and where network is important. So now I want to go to the job component. What does a job look like? The job on the left is not a career move. It is a piece of junk, personally, and yet I would say most of you have jobs that look like this. I mean, this is actually a 175 to 200K job, and it says this, and it starts with this. I mean, think about it. This is a 200K job that starts with strong organizational and time management skills. Give me a break. What you think? Right away, you just wouldn't even apply. I said, you've got to be an idiot to write this stuff. Must be customer focused, excellent oral and written communications, outstanding. Who wrote this? I mean, it's an embarrassment that somebody would write, this is a big company whom you're aware of. This is actually the same ad that Wells Fargo has for tellers. Outstanding presentation and interpersonal skills. And that's their lead. That's their lead. Knowledge, skills, and abilities needed for the telecommunications systems engineer role. Then it goes on with a bunch of other boilerplate. Then it goes on with all these technical skills. Then it goes on with, I mean, read this. This is really geared to a high person. This is not a career move, guys. This is a lateral transfer that will not attract anybody. Travel would be, typical travel would be 25 to 50% within the month, but maybe more or less depending on account activity when they sign. What's the point of even saying that? There's no law that says you have to put this junk on. There's no law that says you have to put all the skills down. Now, I know you're going to argue that, but I got the #1 lawyer in the country at the #1 law firm in the country who litigates OFCCPEO, and he says this is a stupid job. You don't need to put it down. That's not objective criteria. Now, here's some other criteria you don't need. BS or equivalent. 3 years industry working as an equipment vendor, proven track of taking complex engineering and maturing products. I mean, this is the stuff that people write because they don't want to spend the time understanding the work. And yet candidates who accept jobs, that's all they do. They want to understand the work they're going to be doing. And if you, the recruiter, don't understand the work, you're just playing games, guys. You're just dialing for dollars. This is the job. Now this is, at first level, this is the job. This might not be a career move yet. I'll describe that in a moment. The job itself, when you read between the lines, it's collaborate with sales reps at Fortune 500 companies working with C-level executives. High visibility, high exposure job. This person is the technical liaison for these high telecommunications infrastructure projects. This is the #1 techie guy who works with corporate customers. He also, or she, also communicates back to the home office. They also #1 techie with the customer, also the #1 techie person with the product marketing and the engineering team. They also work with the finance, accounting, and contracts team to develop contracts, $5 to $50 million projects. This is the person doing all the pricing analysis to make sure that the contract meets. This is a huge job, guys. Then they're handling 3 to 6 major programs concurrently. And anytime a customer asks for a design change, this person has to figure it out in real time. High technical, high visibility, high presentation. This is the kind of person who will be a senior project manager at some point in time and get the visibility to do it. Remarkable job. So you can clearly see the one on the right is a better job. Now, the way I convert it, and I can't get into all the details today other than conceptually, when I'm interviewing a candidate, assuming I was interviewing Adrienne for this job, I would find out some of her accomplishments. Hey, Adrienne, tell me a little about yourself. We'll get into the concept of how I do it. But what I'm looking for is a gap between what the candidate has done in this job and present that. So in my mind, if I was talking with an explorer and that person was looking for a good career move, I'd say, here do I think this could be a good job. If you're working at a smaller company, you're not dealing with C-level officers, you're not really totally responsible for the technical aspects, you're really the key person, give you multifunctional exposure, will give you broader exposure to senior executives at lots of different companies, and you'll be actually the key person involved in leading negotiations for $5 to $50 million years, $5 to $50 million contracts. This to me seems like it's at least worth serious consideration, and I'd like to arrange a more in-depth conversation. That's the concept of how we do it. But if you, the recruiter, don't know this, what's on the right, impossible to target passive candidates, and you're not going to get many referrals off networking. So there's some foundational stuff you need to be in the network. JJ, any questions based on that at this point?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay, so now let me talk about how do you find people. Now, without knowing that job, the skills that we teach in our classes, and we have advanced recruiter classes, we've got passive recruiter, we've got recruiter boot camp. It doesn't really matter. You're not going to get there. So knowing the job is essential if you're going after the 83% of people who are not looking. Otherwise, you're just a gatekeeper and a box checker. And plenty of recruiters are, but this is for recruiters who want to really be considered strategic assets to their company. So think, and this is where I really like LinkedIn. I want to kind of come up with some techniques so you can experience it. Here's you, the center of your network. You have your first degree connections, and I assume every one of you has over 500, I assume. If you have more than 500 people in your network, just put how many people you have in your network. I just want to see some numbers go by here. How many people do you connected to in your network on LinkedIn? We're talking about, Rachel, right now we're talking about networking. Because that's what people want. They want to learn how to network. They don't realize that before you can network, you got to know the job. I can tell you all the techniques. You won't get a single person. But you got 500 people. What's real value? The real value is your connections, because on LinkedIn Recruiter, I can connect with every one of them. I'll give you some simple techniques in a moment. But if you don't know the job, it won't really matter. It won't give you any referrals, and you're just dialing for dollars, which is what a lot of search firms do, and a lot of recruiters do. It's about technique. It's not about numbers. And then you have the third degree connections. In my mind, the value of LinkedIn is your first and second degree connections. Yeah, you might get somebody in the third degree, but I don't care about those. I can find people in 2 to 3 days just with my network. So a lot of people, so I'm always thinking in out, not out in. LinkedIn sells 250 million people. I sell the connection. I now know who's connected to everybody on this call. Now, some of you have hidden your connections, but if you're my coworker, I suspect you would open them up to me if it was part of the employee referral program. And I'll kind of describe that. So here's what I want to do to demonstrate networking, what it is and what it isn't. I'd like you to think about the best person in your functional area you have ever worked with. The best person you have ever worked with. And I'd like you to put in the chat area the name of the person or the initials of the person or the first name of the person, the title of the person, and why the person is top-notch. So 3 things: the person's name, the title of the person, the best person you've ever worked with in your functional area of recruiting, and why is the person top-notch. And those 3 pieces of information are essential. So just put those in there, think about it, and you'll see why. Now I'm going to go back into how knowing that information just is a game changer. See, I forgot that these don't just populate. We got Ron, best leader ever. I don't have any. I have somebody generous, but I don't know who is generous. Now, put in the name, and there's a reason for this, because you're going to ask this question to other people you're networking with. This is networking. The name of the person, the title of the person, and why. Okay. Okay, so we got some information. I want to ask you another question. Yeah, we're getting it. Would that person call me back if I mention your name? That's the 4th criteria. So you can put yes or no. If you don't get a yes, it doesn't do any good. You know, heartbeat. Great. Okay, now this is why this is important. Now I want to go through some metrics. Remember, the network is really about metrics. Number 1, they call you back. I have a rule. I have a search firm with 12 people. I have my own personal rule when I do with my recruiter. But I don't do many searches. I really haven't done real search for 10, 12 years now. I do it playing at it just to make sure I understand how it works. And it hasn't changed much, although the tools have changed. I want to make sure you. Number 1, getting a call back is the most important thing in the world. What's the point of calling somebody that don't call you back? So that's why I say I don't understand how any recruiting manager, they make lots of calls, and third-party recruiters make lots of calls. That's such a silly way of managing a search firm. We work with a lot of search firms and say, throw that part out. Make intelligent calls. I want people to call me back. And I want 80% of the people to call me back. Why would I take 100? I'll take 80%. That's a good target. More importantly, how many people who call you back, you call someone to call you back and they're not qualified? I mean, how much a waste of time that is. You call someone, they don't call you back, or they do call you back and they're not qualified. And then you ask them, do they know anybody? I don't want referrals from people who aren't qualified. I want recruiters from the people you just mentioned. They're all good people. You just said they're great people. So I call Scott up. Scott's great. Even if I don't hire Scott, I'm now dealing with some premium people. And I know Scott's, if he refers somebody to me, he's going to be a good person. I'm going to go through the whole process here. And I ask the yes question. When I call them up, because remember I went back, I said earlier, you have to stay in control of the conversation. The way you stay in control of the conversation, at least initially, is ask this question. Would you be open to explore a situation if it were clearly superior to what you're doing today? The universal yes question. Nobody says no to that. That's not true. 15% say no, and if you go to our course, you figure out how to get the 10% of that back. So you can really get 95% of the people say yes. Who wouldn't want to talk? I mean, I talked to somebody who's a senior vice president of a major corporation doing extremely well. I was having lunch with a person about 2 months ago. I said, hey, Bill, if I called you up, I know you love your work, but would you just talk 5 minutes about a job that could be enormous potential? He said, of course I would. I mean, of course people do. He said, probably not going to go anywhere, but I'm happy to talk. If the recruiter's credible, why wouldn't I want to talk to that person? So the point is, ask the yes question, and then you determine if you want to recruit the candidate network with the candidate. Don't say, hey, Scott, would you like to be, I'm just networking for this kind of job, and hopefully the person bites. That's a little too soft. We're going to be direct, and we're going to control the conversation. And we're going to recruit first, network second. The reason this is, and I call it the 80-20 rule, the reason it's so important is networking is far more important than this in-out networking. Searching on your first-degree connections is how networking takes place. There's technique, there's process, there's metrics. The metrics are 80%, this is what I suggest, with the 80-20 rule. And with our recruiters, when I had a recruiting, and even with my current sourcer, I ask, is this person who you referred to me referred, or is this person cold called? So I track how many referrals we get. I track, you called 17 people, how many referrals did you get from those 17 people? We've gotten 34. We at least 2 referrals per person. This is before LinkedIn. Now it's so easy. It's I mean, I'll show you in a moment how to get, I mean, it's so simple to get referrals today, good referrals. But just think about the metrics. You call 20 people. If they're warm calls, assume 80% call you back. That's 16. 80% ask yes, they'd be open to talk. That's 12. 80% are worthy, somehow you didn't pull it off. That's 9. You get 2 referrals, now you're back to 18. I mean, of the 18, because now you're going to start cherry picking the referrals, you can get potential send outs in 2 or 3 days. You probably only have to call 6 or 8 people if you're really good at it. Now, you still have dialing for dollars, people who just want number, oh, I just want to start calling, I just want to start calling. You call 100 people, 20% call you back, you're down to 20. 20 people, you call 20 people, you're only down to 4. One of them maybe says yes to your question, hey, I'm interested in the cost manager's position in Mississippi. No, not interested. Well, who do you know? Even if they do call you back, you don't know if they're worthy or not. I mean, just think about, when you think about the metrics behind it or the process behind it, you realize, hey, networking is about getting referrals, warm referrals who will call you back who are pre-qualified. That's the golden rule of passive account recruitment. I tell my hiring managers, I will have 3 to 4 prospects to you within 72 hours. However, you have to do some things for that. We're not going to use a skills-based job description. We're going to use a performance-based job description. We're going to convert these skills into a real career. That's what I tell Matt. But for that, you're going to see 3 to 4 top people who can meet the requirements. They can liaison with Fortune 500 C-level officers. They can negotiate $5 to $50 million contracts. They are technically capable to real-time to focus on that. Ooh, that sounds pretty cool. Managers will make that trade-off. Now, a prospect isn't a candidate. A prospect is someone who is fully qualified, who is willing to talk to the hiring manager to see if the job is a career move. Because for a candidate's perspective, the job not only has to have stretch and growth, but it's also, hey, do I want to work for this manager? And I tell managers, we're going after the 83% of the market who is not looking. Part of their decision to look is not only the job in a company, but it's you the hiring man, and the team. So we got to do this right. So passive candidate recruiting is not just a one-on-one with the recruiter. It's 3-on-1. Maybe it's 2-on-1. Recruiter, hiring manager, and a recruiter at least, and then the job, the company, all other stuff. So this is where, now I want to kind of get into the bowels of it. That's the concept. We're now about 2,000 feet. JJ, any questions here? People kind of blown away.
Yeah, we do have some questions about LinkedIn, about the functionality of LinkedIn, and then what are the yes questions?
Okay. Well, I'll go through those.
Okay.
Yes question, which I'll repeat again one more time, is would you be open to explore a situation if it were clearly superior to what you're doing today? Universal yes question. But there's something you have to do when you ask it, and I'll tell you that in a minute. One thing you have to do is not tell the person what the job is. So we'll get to that. But you have to take control of the conversation. Let's assume, I want to get into the bowels now. Here's LinkedIn Recruiter. You have a LinkedIn Recruiter, just make sure, and if you don't, let me just say this. If you're a third-party recruiter and don't have a LinkedIn Recruiter, you're penny wise and pound foolish. It's just a remarkable tool. Maybe you can consider it a little too expensive, but if you're a serious recruiter, it's pocket change. You're making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of placements. That doesn't make sense. If you're a corporate recruiter, it's just, in my mind, passive account recruiting is really, from a quality of hire, cost per hire, time to fill, just blows the metrics away for anything else. So to me, I'm going after passive candidates regardless. It's an untapped market. I don't need to focus on weeding out the weak. I'm going to attract the best, and I'll raise the quality of the people I hire. But let me just kind of make some contentions on how to use LinkedIn Recruiter from a networking standpoint. Obviously, I'm not going to go through the Boolean stuff. You don't need Boolean. I mean, I don't know why. To me, it's so easy to find candidates and you can get in the phone, but that's my opinion. Here's just a product marketing search, and it's in 10 miles of Orange County, California, where I live. So if I was doing a search for product marketing, I just go through it. It turned out to be 1,435 people. It was a little too many, obviously. Let's assume that I worked at Kawasaki, and then I'll demonstrate what I call a virtual talent community in PERPing. And a PERP is a proactive employee referral program. Right now, assuming I worked at Kawasaki, Chris Brull, I'll just look up Kawasaki and I'll find, do how many people here? I don't know how many are. There's about 30 people on LinkedIn who worked in marketing at Kawasaki. Well, I don't know about you guys, but if I've got a employee referral program where I've got a lot of people in my company, I'm going to start getting referrals from them. Number one, they're going to link to me even if I'm not linked to them. So like I said, I'll start networking with my own coworkers. It seems so obvious to me. I'm doing a search. I don't need to find, again, when I take a search, I don't look at, when I take a new search assignment, I'm not thinking, how am I going to find this person? I'm first thinking, who knows this person where I can get a referral? Who knows this person? If I'm looking for a product marketing person, well, I know a director of marketing would know that person. And if Chris works at my company, I know he's going to connect with me. Slam dunk. So I click on Chris's connection. And Chris has got over 500 connections. It turns out, because this is blue, I can search on those. If it wasn't blue, I could call Chris up and, hey, Chris, would you open up your connections, which is a simple box on or button in the settings area up here. You click on that and you'll see the settings and you look at searchable connections, yes or no. I can search in here, interesting. Chris is obviously looking, but this is a totally different issue. You don't put your home number here or your email address unless you want to be contacted. So that's there. But what's interesting is also the clone button is, let's assume Chris was a candidate. I could just push this button and get some other candidates. So here's some other candidates that are just like Chris if he was the right person. So very, very quickly I can get candidates to go after, but I would rather get a referral. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Chris's connections and see what I get. Well, first off, let me just kind of define a couple of questions. I want to just make a point here. How do I clear the screen? Okay, here's what you shouldn't ask. Do not, when you get a person on the phone, do not ask, who do you know? Because most people think that's in who do you know who's looking. Hey, I'm looking for a cost manager, who do you know? Well, I don't know anybody. And whether you say, who do you know who's looking, which is even worse. So I always ask, if I was going to ask Chris, is just, who is the best cost manager you know? Just like I asked you. I just said generically, but if I knew that Adam, let me just pick some other names here. If I knew that Christine Rice was a recruiter for financial managers, I would say, Christine, who's the best financial analyst you've ever worked with? If Christopher was handling logistics, hey, Christopher, who's the best logistics person you've ever had to do cross-docking? If Colm was working on software developers, hey, Colm, who is the best scrum manager you've ever worked with or know of? Or project manager? Because I'm looking at networking. So I find out who's the best person in the field, and I recruit them. I have no problem calling people up who aren't looking. I don't want to know people who are looking. I want people who are not looking. Alternatively, I could do it, which we're going to do in a moment. What do you think of a specific person for the position? That's the proactive piece. Rather than just calling, well, proactive, I guess, is multiple. That's the proactive piece is I'm going to actually search on Chris's, in this case, search on Chris's connections and ask him some specific questions. Let me kind of do that. So I just looked at Chris's connections. He had about over 1,200. I could say, hey, I didn't in this case, but let's assume that there was about 14 in Orange County. 14 product managers in Orange County. Let's assume these were them. Hey, Chris, what do you think of Tori? Tori's a great person, but not looking. I know him real well, but you could try to call him, but he's well-connected. Call him. What do you think of Chuck? Chuck's way too heavy, but a great guy. What do you think of Christy? She's perfect. Yeah, call her up. I think she could do it. I'll call her for you, in fact. I mean, fundamentally, that's what it's about. You just give it's so much easier to say, what do you think about so-and-so for this job? They tell you. Then you call Christy up and say, hey, hi, Christy. I was just talking with Chris Bull. He suggested I give you a buzz. He said you weren't looking for a job. He just said you're an outstanding person. Let me just ask you this question, Christy. Would you be open to explore a situation if it were clearly superior to what you're doing today? Great. Let's review your LinkedIn profile. I'll tell you a little about the job. I'll get to know you a little bit, and we'll see if this represents a career move, and then we can talk in more depth later. That's the process. And you focus on this, any job for as soon as you get the assignment, you focus on it for 3 or 4 hours doing that. A couple of days, you'll have candidates. You can't predict that you're going to have candidates when you post an ad. And that's what most recruiters do. They post an ad, and then they go back and say, I hope. What they do, marginal work on a lot of stuff, and you think it's effective. I would rather do great work on a few things, and it will be effective. So JJ, I don't know if I'm going to do obviously some more stuff here. What if the job is not superior to what the candidate? Let me take this one. I got this one, JJ.
Okay, and there's one more question after that.
I got it, JJ. I got this one. What if the job? Then you can ask another one. What if the job is not superior? Is in fact, well, then that's a great point. I want to kind of go through that in a minute, but let's assume I call Christy up and I say, "Great, Christy, let me explore your background." What I'm doing in that first 10 minutes of that call is finding out if the job is superior. And superior means it has to have 3 or 4 components. I actually call it the 30% solution, but is it a bigger job in terms of scope, scale, complexity, visibility? Is it have longer-term growth opportunity? Is there more exposure? Is there more technology involved? So I'm looking for 5 or 6 things to say, hey, Christy, here's why I think this is a better job for you. And that's why you have to get the candidate to talk first, which we'll talk about. That's the control piece. If you tell the candidate about the job too soon, they instantly judge not a big enough job. I don't like the title, don't like the location. You have to talk to the candidate first and then honestly know the job that you've got and say, here's why I think it is. Alternatively, you can say, well, it's not, and that's what I do. So that's the essence of it. I'll go through it. JJ, I'm sorry, was another question? I just saw that one here. I thought it was very appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, there was one more question about functionality of LinkedIn. Does LinkedIn Recruiter allow you to see contacts who are hidden?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, it doesn't do that. So that's a very fair question. However, for example, if Laura called me, I see her question there before, and Lou, I know you know a lot of talent managers. If I really knew Laura, I don't know you, Laura, so I'm not going to do it, so don't ask me. I might say, okay, Laura, I'll open up my connections for a half hour. You go through there and you ask me about 2 or 3 of them. And I would do that. Now, Chris Brill, I don't even know what this guy's name was anymore, Chris Brill. I don't know him. I just did the search. Well, let's assume Chris was a candidate. Hold on, somebody just walked in the office. So if Chris really was a coworker, I just call him, Chris, would you mind opening up your connections to me? I see they're hidden. Would you mind opening for a half hour? You got the search going on. It's part of our employee referral program. I mean, how many coworkers would not, you got to be pretty much of a jerk if a coworker wouldn't open up your connections for you. So that's a very fair question. So you don't see hidden, you see everybody on the list, but you don't see them connect. You only see the connections with your first degree connections open them up. You don't see them on second degree connections only for. So number one, you have to be connected to Chris, so that's got to be the first step. And then you got to ask if they're hidden, you got to ask them to open them up. So very fair question. So again, the 2 ways to do it. Who's the best person you know in the field, which is a fair question if I called Chris up, or Chris, what do you think of Tori, Chuck, and Christy? So those 2 ways are how you pull out names. Both of them are good. So here's the basic recruiting call and how the process works, which also answers the questions. This is the yes question. Let me ask you candidly, hey, would you open explore a situation if it was clearly superior to what you're doing today? On that survey, we've done the survey every year. We've actually done it for 25 years, so in real life, 90% or more people say yes. And in this market, even people who aren't actively looking, they do hope a recruiter calls. They really hope you do call. But you have to be very, very professional. You, the recruiter, have to be knowledgeable about the job, the industry. You have to be what I call SWK, someone worth knowing. Because if you call, and I call people and I leave a voicemail, nobody answers the phone. I am reasonably credible when you look at my LinkedIn profile. People, oh, the guy writes articles, does this. So it's not fair for me. But a lot of people can be credible. You have groups, you belong to groups, you write posts, you're up there. Hey, this is a well-connected person. Most people say, I want to work with that. I want to connect with that person. They might not think it's going to be perfect this time, but they do want. But you have to be enough where a person wants to connect with you. So your LinkedIn profile helps you. Then they call you back. And my goal is, let's assume I pick Craig, just because his name's there. So I call Craig. Hey, Craig, would you be open to explore a situation that was clearly superior to what you're doing today? That's the opening question. I do not then tell you, and you say yes. I do not tell you about the job. Hey, I'm looking for a senior financial manager in a company that's exploding company, just got $20 million of financing, could be an early stage company, but really is starting to really generate some revenue. Could be an interesting opportunity. Would you open to explore something if something there was really interesting? Just pretty vague. Now, I just make it big enough so that it would get the candidate's interest. I asked this question, the 98, would you be interested in talking? But here's the key, is I don't tell Craig about the job. Now, Craig's might, 70% of the people, I would just say something like this and they would go with it. Hey, Craig, why don't you do this? Why don't you give me let's look on your LinkedIn profile. You say yes. I say, great. Let's look on your LinkedIn profile for a minute or two. I'll then give you a quick overview of the job. And if it looks like it could be something serious, we can then schedule sometime later today to talk in more depth. That's as much as I tend to tell people. Now, there's probably 6. I'm not even going to go through these today. If you got LinkedIn Recruiter, I'll be doing these at Talent Connect. The 6 things that candidates ask after you call them up on the phone. What's the money? What's the title? What's the location? What's the company? I don't like this. How do you handle that? There are 15 or 20% of people do want a little bit of information, and a good recruiter can handle every one of those deftly. I'm not going to go through our recruiter boot camp. We go through it, so that's the part I'm not giving you away here, guys. But you got to get the candidate to talk first. You got to handle any objections that they say. You have to engage 5 to 10 minutes, and as I think Laura suggested, this is where you determine if it's a career move. It's the gap between what needs to be done and what the candidate has accomplished, and you're looking for that gap to be about 20 to 30% increase. And if it is, hey, Craig, I really think this is why we should take the next step. I like your background. You might be a little bit light in the area of building teams and working in this fast-paced environment, but you've done some real interesting technology things. You've handled some critical projects. I think it's at least worth going to the next step. It's going to be a team that you're only managing, what, 5 or 6 people? It's going to be 10, so it might be a stretch there. But let me ask you this. If this really represents a great career move, and we got to still prove that, but if it does, would you at least be having a more serious conversation, possibly even exploratory conversation with the hiring manager, but recognize that it might not be a big comp increase? Would you at least be willing to go to that next step? No obligation on any side, just purely exploratory. How many candidates do you think say no? Nobody says no to that. Now, it has to be, you have to really know your stuff. It can't be BS and generalization. It really has to be 5 people to 10 people. Craig has been in this job for 2 years and it's grown 3 to 4%. My job, I've got a company going 25 to 30%. We actually are going to add 7 people. We actually do have a $7 million budget for advertising and product marketing, not a $1.5 million budget. You have to know this stuff, because if you don't, the whole thing falls apart. That's why I say everybody wants to start learning, oh, let me source, let me do networking. There's a lot of groundwork you got to do before you get to that point. But most recruiters don't want to do it. The good recruiters do, because they know that's the end game, is you got to be prepared to close passive candidates who aren't looking. And now, let's assume Craig was too high. Craig, I love your background. This is not a big enough job for you, quite frankly. I love it, but you're just too senior for it. At best, this is a lateral transfer. So I don't think it would make it. We might be growing a little bit faster than your company, but bottom line, it's a lateral transfer. I just don't think it would make sense. Now, if Craig comes back and says something, well, then I got it. But I'm assuming that it really is it's not interesting. On the other hand, if Craig's too light, hey, Craig, I like your background, but remember I said that you need a 30% stretch. This is about 60 or 70. I would lose credibility as a recruiter. We couldn't get you in here. It wouldn't matter. Couldn't get you in from a comp standpoint. You're just way too light on that. You're too light on the scope and management. You've only managed 5 people. This is going to be 15 people. We just can't bridge the gap there. Regardless, I'd like to stay in touch with you. In fact, why don't we connect on LinkedIn? Whether it's high or low, I connect on LinkedIn. And actually, even if I connect on LinkedIn, I can do it real time sometimes during a phone call. Hey, Craig, I'm looking at your connections here. You used to work for somebody. Oh, you used to work at UPS. You were a dispatcher there. Who was your boss there? Because you think that person would be interesting for this warehouse management position? Now, all of a sudden, you can now start connecting in real time. You don't have to do it. You can call them tomorrow. But nonetheless, I'm saying LinkedIn Recruiter, because it's a network, allows you to do some stuff that used to take weeks in the early days that you can do in moments right now. Now, you might want to stretch out the moments to days, but that's a process decision, not a restraint in the system decision. So that's basically the process we use for networking. This is the other process I think it's critical that you know. And I think recruiters rush it. It takes candidates who's not looking, it takes a candidate like Craig who is not looking, if he's for this warehouse management position, hours spread over days, if not weeks, of time to determine if your job is the career move. Even if there's a relocation, it takes weeks to make that call, and there's family decisions. Recruiters try to make everything a transaction. Perfect fit, perfect job, let's go. That's not recruiting. I don't think in all the years I made over 500 placements. They're all retained, a lot of money. I don't think any of them was a perfect fit at first. You got to judge the job, judge the candidate, reconsider, look at it this way, look at it that way. And your job is to sell the next step, not the job. Craig, if this is not a career move, let's just have another half-hour conversation. I'd like to get more on your background on managing a team. I think it could be a career move, but I got to understand that. If that works well, I'd like you to maybe have an exploratory conversation with the hiring manager. But let's just you and I have this first conversation, see if it's a career move. Selling the next step, not the job. It's not a transaction, it's a career move, and it takes time to buy into a career move. And if it's a relocation, it takes even more time. Craig, I know this is not a great location. There's no way you're even going to consider this unless it's a remarkable career move. Let's just take the first step. Worst case, let's network. I'm going from no to maybe to yes. And if it's a more difficult search or different location, there's a lot of maybes in there and more steps. So you got to take shorter steps sometimes. But you just got to get people so that they see all the information and they're not going to get it right away. And they will have a tendency to ask you, what's the job, what's the title, what's the location, all this day one stuff. They won't take the job based on day one stuff. They'll take the job because of what they can do and become, which is year one in the future. And if that year one in the future is tremendous, the day one may be a little bit inconvenient, maybe not perfect, but in balance, the job is a great career move. And you, the recruiter, have to balance all of those competing needs and conversations. So what I've given you kind of is the way it's supposed to work. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to work, so you got to have a lot of skills. That's what our training is all about. So let me kind of just summarize it here and then open it up to questions. I wrote a post for LinkedIn Talent blog, recruiting blog, I guess last week I think it was. I call it the magic bus theory of recruiting, and this is Jim Collins getting the right people on the bus. A passive candidate is in the driver's seat, and your bus is advertising, hey, come here, and a recruiter's job is to get that passive man in, and they think they're in the driver's seat. As soon as you get the person on the phone, you got to put the person in the passenger seat. So I call Craig. Craig, have you opened an Explorer seat with clear speak? Yeah, absolutely. Great, Craig. Why don't you give me a quick 2-minute overview of your background? I'll give you a 2-minute overview of the job we've got. If it makes good sense, we can talk in more depth. If Craig agrees to that, I just put it in the passenger seat. During the interview, I'm looking for gaps and voids in his background in comparison to my job. And if they're just right, and he sees a career move, he says, oh, I want to drive, this is great, because I don't know where the destination of this bus is. And too many recruiters send the bus. I'm looking for a software manager in Toledo. Well, I don't want to go to Toledo. I don't want to be a software manager at your company. However, the person might go to Toledo and be a software manager if the job's a great career move. So all of that, I don't know what you might want to call it, but it's bus driving, and that's what recruiting is all about. In that 10-minute call, you're figuring the destination. And is it worthy? Part of it is overcoming concerns and objections, and there's lots of them. What's the money is the big one. What's the location? What's the title? I mean, you got to handle all of those. And I probably have given some in my books and other webcasts. If you've been in any of our training, I see Deb Heiner there. You've been to it, Deb. You see what these are. The idea of recruiting is why I say you have to control the process. Recruiting isn't you selling the candidate. It's getting the candidate to sell you. If I say, Craig, I'm a little bit concerned you're a little light for this job. You've only managed 6 people. This is 10. If Craig's any good, what do you think he's going to do? Oh, I can do it. I can do it. Because I know Craig, this is a move. Craig doesn't make the decision alone. Every passive candidate who's got multiple opportunities seeks the advice and counsel of their spouse, their friends, their family, their coworkers. So when the spouse comes home, or Craig goes home, and the Craigs of the world, or the Marys of the world go home and they say, I've got a call from this recruiter. Sounds pretty interesting. Oh, what's the money, honey? Oh, it's not about the money. This is a great career move. You know you've got an opportunity to hire that candidate. If you don't do that, you're just playing the dice. Don't take no for an answer. A lot of no's, but you just got to persist. And part of our training is how do you overcome the no's. One of it is you don't ask questions that can be answered by no. I didn't ask, Craig, would you like to be a warehouse manager in Toledo? I said, Craig would be interested in a senior logistics management position if it was a great career opportunity. Don't ask no questions. It's one way to prevent the no's. That's really applicant control, controlling the process. It took me about 6 or 7 months to figure it out. The first day I became a recruiter, this guy Mark said applicant control is the key. I made one placement in my first month in recruiting. It was the easiest thing in the world. Did not make another one for 6 months and was ready to drop out. And then all of a sudden it hit me what applicant control was, controlling the conversation. And I don't think there was another month that I didn't make 2 or 3 placements. It was just unbelievable. Now, it had to be real. You had to know the job. You had to know human nature. You had to be able to influence people. You had to be able to overcome objections. You had to be able to drive the bus or let someone else drive it, but you're pulling the strings on it. That's what networking is all about. Bottom line, it's the core of passive candidate recruiting. The key is to maintain applicant control. You have to get the candidate to sell you. You have to manage the first 10 minutes. You have to sell the next step, not the job. Let's open it up for a few questions, JJ, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, when you're networking with somebody that you've met before in person, how do you get past how do you establish that immediate relationship with them so that you can get them to help you when they're really busy and they have no real needs to help you?
Now, who asked that question?
That was Rachel.
Okay, so Rachel, you got to remember, I've asked Rachel, 80% of the time I'm getting a warm referral. So Rachel has just told me about Denise Blanks. So I called Denise. Hi, Denise. Rachel, I don't know Rachel's last name, just suggests I give you a call. You weren't looking, but she suggested that you and I should network, be connected, and that there's one opportunity here that might be of interest. On the chance that this job represents a great career move, would you at least be open to talk 5 or 10 minutes? Right there. I've got the person to call me back because it's a warm referral. It's a very important question. That's why I know the path of least resistance for me is getting warm referrals. Obviously, 20% of the time I have to call people who I don't know. But if I call Donna Marsh up, hey Donna, I'm a recruiter at XYZ company. I've been looking at your LinkedIn profile. I have the need for a senior product marketing person in this area. Your background looks perfect. I'd love to discuss it with you for a few minutes. Here's my LinkedIn profile. If you've got a moment to chat, at least would you be open to talk was a real important career move. Now, I'm probably not going to get the best yield on those calls. But if I call 20 people with a great email and a great voicemail, then I always do both, great email and voicemail. Sometimes I even push them to an ad. If you see, if any of my ads are very creative, so I might have an ad, an email, and a voicemail, I'm going to get 30 to 40% of those people who I don't know to call me back. Once I get them on the phone, Donna's going to very quickly know that I know what I'm talking about. I'm very confident. I mean, maybe in this case I don't, but when I take an assignment, I don't play a game with a guy. It's not super. I know we're taking an assignment for a VP. I don't do a lot of searches, but this one's very interesting. I will study the industry. I will study the job. I will meet the management team. I will know the company. I'll know the performance profile because we're going to create it. I'll understand the candidate. I will have done my homework for that position. Now, if I'm hiring all software developers, I would do the same thing. If I was hiring a bunch of sales reps, I would know the same thing. So you got to be a subject matter expert in your field of choice. When somebody's asked about phone numbers, what's so hard about a phone number? I mean, I got a company name. I called somebody just the other day who it was a partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I just needed to talk to him. Just looked up on the Pricewaterhouse LA. I'd like to talk to Bill. There's a phone. I mean, what's so hard about getting a phone, guys? I mean, you don't need. It's like you got a phone. You call up and you dial you dial. I guess I find that amazing that people need to find out. I've got a lot of questions about how you get the phone number. This seems so simple. I mean, I just did this when I did our controller search last year. Most of them didn't have phone numbers. I called up Warner Brothers. I called up Disney. got the phone number for everybody. Want 30 seconds? It's just, to me, sorry guys. I mean, you do have, even though they don't have an operator there, which you might not even know what that is, they do have a directory. Push 411 for the directory, and you put the person's name in, and you get it right there. Okay, let's get a more detailed question than phone numbers. But that was my answer.
There's a related question to phone number. In addition to how do you find the phone number, do you have a preference? Is there one that you prefer better, phone or email over the other? Do you do one first and then the other, or is there a preference?
Okay, you got to remember again, the 80-20 rule is 80% warm referrals. The person who gives me the referral is going to give me the phone number. 20% are cold calls. Of the 20%, I would say a third of them already have the phone numbers built, just like that guy Chris Brawl. I didn't really call him, but his phone number was right there. I would do all three. I'm going to call the person up. I'm going to send the person an email, and I'm going to phone. No, that's not true. That's two things said 3 times. Within the email, I'm going to also push them to the job posting, and my job postings are very, very creative. They're not like yours. They are very creative, and it's in our training we show you exactly how to do that process. Obviously, I can't in this class give you all of them. Let me kind of just summarize some things that are coming up. JJ, oops, see Daisy. Don't I have the upcoming meetings? Oh, I didn't put that in there. That's too bad. Okay, I thought I did, but too bad. So I'll just say, if you guys are in New York City, I am hosting a full-day recruiter boot camp program on the 26th at the Cornell Club. You can go to our website and find it, and you'll probably get a link to that in the email that JJ will send out to you. That's next Thursday in New York City. Next month, on October 30th, I will be in D.C. area for a full-day recruiter boot camp at the Towers Club in Tyson's Corner. On December 10th, well, October, I guess it's the second week in October, I'll be at LinkedIn Talent Connect. Hopefully you'll be there. And if you're at LinkedIn Talent Connect, make sure you go to my session, because I'm going to be talking about what are the 6 things that candidates say, how do you overcome it? We're overcoming objections there. We'll actually do them in both boot camps as well. And then the third week in October, I'll be at LinkedIn Talent Connect in London, and we'll do the same program. So hopefully see if you're anywhere, any of those locations. Hope to see you live. We also have our online recruiter boot camp with the same program, which is October 4th is the next. We do the same program online, 4 consecutive Fridays, 2 hours each. If you can't make it, buy the book. It's $10. It's got a lot of stuff in there. It isn't going to break your budget. It isn't going to make me rich, but it will help you. But what it will do is it gives me more credibility in the marketplace because I sell more books. But more importantly, it'll help you hire better people. And that's what this course was about. Focus on what people do and become. Focus on scarcity. Focusing on networking is the game changer. And I call that the high-tech, high-touch approach. I love LinkedIn Recruiter. I just love it. But in the hands, but it's not just a piece of technology. In the hands of a great recruiter, it's a remarkable tool. That's the high-tech, high-touch combination. With that, guys, I wish you the best of luck as you hire great people. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Lou. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today. You will be getting a follow-up email in your inbox in about an hour, which will have information that Lou talked about his appearance in New York and in Washington, D.C. Also, it will have an email. If you have a question that we weren't able to answer today, there'll be instructions on how to get that question answered, as well as how to access the recording of today's webinar. We look forward to seeing you at future Ad Group webinars, and have a great afternoon, everyone.